listeners. Welcome back to a new episode of ISST's podcast series Digital Dilemma. This one is really special because this is the one with friends. So we have with us Prama and Pallavi. Prama is an associate scientist within the Gender and Livelihood team at the International Rice Research Institute, IRRI. She has a PhD in environmental sociology and she brings a multidisciplinary perspective to her research focusing on the intersection of gender, livelihood, technology, and climate change. Prama is a very dear friend and she worked at ISST with me before she joined IRRI. So, welcome, Prama.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Advisha.
And we also have Pallavi. Pallavi co leads Utthan, a grassroots based institution modeled around fostering women's agency. With over 2 decades of leadership in gender justice and sustainability initiatives, her published work and action research centers around the voices, experiences, and needs of marginalized women. She has considerable experience in institutional governance, culture, and network building. And just when we were starting to record this episode, she also told us Utthan has recently won a climate change award from Gujarat Energy Development Agency. So, congratulations to Team Utthan and welcome, Pallavi.
Thank you. Thank you, Anvesha, for having me here.
So, Utthan and ISST have a long history of working together on varied issues. We have done a study together on, it was a safety audit of 10 villages in rural Gujarat. Then there's been a long association through a longitudinal study on backlash and women's movement, wherein we worked with Samarthan Mahila Sanghathan, one of the Sanghathans under Utthan's models of Sanghathans in Gujarat. And then finally, we sort of got together for a case study, which was commissioned by IRRI's Gender Impact Platform, the Social Technological Innovations Bundling. And this is the basis of this podcast. So we have come here together to talk about, while there are many technical digital innovations that are happening in the agri-food systems and over the past few decades and phenomenally now, women are still finding it difficult adopting climate smart agriculture technologies, learning through digital means, getting used to digital means. And the STIBS case study, in a way, also showed how there needs to be an innovative way of bundling technical and other social behavioral innovations, which would actually lead to results of greater adaptability and sustainability of digital means and interventions in agri-food systems. I think that's a great way to actually begin with the entire idea of, what are some of the barriers that are preventing women from effectively using and adopting, say, digital tools in agricultural landscape of India. So maybe I can ask this first to Prama, and then if Pallavi, you can give us some examples from the field as well.
So, my first feeling when I first hear the word digital tools is that it's a long haul because we know that in general, women have been overlooked in agriculture from a long time, in spite of the fact that they are the backbone of agriculture. And even other tools, technologies which are non digital, haven't reached them yet. So, when we talk about digital, it is a far long distance that we need to travel to go there. Of course, digital tools in agriculture presents a transformative opportunity to enhance resilience and sustainability in farming. Digital tools have the potential to increase productivity, improve livelihoods, and empower women with greater control over agricultural decision making. However, if gendered dynamics are not carefully considered, digital agriculture risks reinforcing or I would say even deepening existing inequalities. In rural areas where many women lack even the basic infrastructure and services, the gender gap in digital access is particularly stark. Without access, the promise of digital technology remains out of reach. And I think several systemic and structural barriers, such as gender biases, affordability constraints, and regional disparities, limit women's ability to acquire and effectively use digital tools. I think it is important to acknowledge that digital technology is no magic bullet, and to make it work, a more holistic approach is needed. one that recognizes that digital tool is a part of a broader strategy rather than a standalone fix. So pushing digital solutions without understanding the local context, infrastructure, and complementary policies risks undermining their intended impact. So yeah, that is what I have to say.
So moving on to the question, I think even our data, the NFHS 5 also says that the digital gap, especially is stark for rural areas. In Gujarat, we see that even mobile phone access for women is just 50%. And in rural areas, it's worse. In the last 5 years, with 5,000 women farmers, we see that, of course, ownership of device is one big issue. And even if women have the device, they don't have the control over the device, which is actually used by, say, the husband or the elder son in the household. Along with that, the affordability is, of course, of the instruments is not such that women can own them independently. And most importantly, the social norms which dominate digital access is also a big challenge and a barrier which we have seen. Because either women are using simple phones or the instruments of others. It doesn't allow them to, do and learn. We all practice and learn, and that becomes the challenge for them. Coupled with all of this is, of course, the lack of literacy, in the first place. So, for example, we are working with the women farmers, but we have a concept where, the socio-technical innovation bundle approach which we use looks at a peer-to-peer learning model in which we have Krishi Sakhis who are the lead farmers in a sense. So even if we look at the Krishi Sakhis, even amongst these lead women farmers, we have most women who have studied only up to class 8 or 10. So it's difficult for them to navigate digital systems, the language which most of these tools we use. Along with that, one important barrier we've seen in our work where we have started using digital tools like use of tablets or use of a digital MIS. There is a huge fear of loss of the equipment. They don't have any previous experience of using a smart equipment.
Both of you do some very interesting work, through community-led capacity buildings. IRRI has entire case studies around STIBs. Utthan has been working with training Krishi Sakis to further train, women farmers on ground. So, if you can you share examples of successful strategies that have worked, and then, of course, while these strategies are working, and what are some of the key challenges that continue to persist?
So yeah, like within the socio-technical innovation bundle approach, we have incorporated the use of digital tools. For example, we have Tushi Sakis who are using tablets. So what has been successful is that the sheer initiation of a Krushi Sakhi, who is a woman leader, who's a farmer herself. Many of them who actually don't own the land they till, being able to use this successfully, it has been itself, an empowering process for her. So, the agriculture usage is the second step, I feel. The first step has been that, I have access to this equipment. So, digital training has been, in a sense, successful to really help these Krishi Sakhis cross the barrier of fear to a great level. Other successful strategy has been using these digital tools which we uploaded with videos, interactive content, material related to the practices around agriculture or how women are able to really own land. These have really helped and enabled them to share the various good practices or what other women have been able to achieve with their peer women farmers. It's not that just the digital tablets or the digital means as what has led to this adoption, but it has been an enabling device for them. Not able to always remember everything by memory. For example, how to prepare Jivamrut, how to prepare Bijamrut. So these things, when they are recorded on the tablet, make it very simple for them to really use it when they speak to women farmers. Along with the social norms around the device, you're also building skills. So hands-on training along with the building confidence, which has been helpful.
So we are working in two villages across two districts in West Bengal, which serve as our learning lab. Here we are collaborating with small and marginal farmers, primarily those engaged in poultry and goat rearing, to develop innovation bundles that strengthen their resilience and empowerment towards climate change. One key lesson has been to realize that technology needs to be demand driven rather than imposed. Traditional extension systems in agriculture has always, it's like pushing technologies onto communities without considering whether they at all need it whether the ecosystem is ready to take that technology in or not at all. For example, as I was talking in a learning labs, in the one that is set for poultry, and we've been rearing poultry, we introduced a feed processing unit because the community identified it as a need. However, when the machine arrived, the necessary electric connection was not yet in place. Hence, the installation was delayed. Now, this highlights a very common challenge. Like, technology comes without the right supporting infrastructure. So, it is not just a technology, but as again Pallavi was saying, it is a package of many other things that needs to come together with that one technology. And just as I was mentioning, the technology alone also is not enough. It needs to be bundled with social and technical interventions to be effective.
Right.
So in the other learning lab, we have kind of installed a shaft cutter for the goats. But we realized that simply providing that machine wasn't enough. That's a technology. Women need training on how to use it, how to maintain it. A system had to be in place for sharing the cut shaft across households, and a business model had to be developed to sustain its use. Most importantly, deep seated societal norms and expectations had to be addressed to enable women to even step out of their home and use the machine freely. So, without tackling these multifarious barriers, even the most well designed technology will remain unutilized, be it digital or non digital. So, I think these are the few kind of challenges that we have faced while working in the community. And the way ahead, I think, is really the bundled approach where we are integrating technology with training, capacity building, and social acceptance, social behavioral norm change kind of things. And that is the only way I think that technology can really help rather than just be there because we want it to be there.
Now, going forward, given the situation, what would be some of the gender transformative digital interventions do you think?
So, my concern will again be from the point of view that let's think of digital to be a part of the continuum of technology. How to make a technology more gender responsive, to make interventions truly gender responsive and even transformative, as you said.
Hmm.
We must start by understanding their specific need. Women's technological requirement can often differ significantly from men, largely due to the type of labor they perform in the field.
Right.
So, for instance, take the rice planting as an example. Now, in paddy fields, women spend long hours working in bent posture, making it
Hmm.
one of the most physical demanding agricultural tasks. Now, any technology introduced in this context should prioritize reducing that physical strain and drudgery. So that is why I think rice transplanters are extremely important. I recently went to Jhargram in West Bengal, and women are saying that, we are becoming bent. Postures are becoming bent because we are doing that, transplanting manually. If you have to really think of technology, let's think of technology from the place that it will help people rather than we have made a technology in a laboratory and we now need to push it. That is something that is extremely important, I think. Similarly, tools like weeders have been very beneficial in reducing workload for women and also improving their efficiency. But I think the challenges goes beyond labor alone. I mean, gender power dynamics and social norms often define who has access to technology, who makes purchasing decisions, and whether women receive the necessary training to use these tools. As we were discussing, in many cases, women lack ownership and control over these technologies, and societal norm make them even hesitant to use this technology. Like we were discussing that, something can break. If a new technology comes at a home, even in our homes, the men of the house are more okay. I mean, they feel more comfortable to first kind of try their hands out than the
Hmm.
women. Somewhere down, we have kind of internalized that patriarchal norm that, okay, technology is meant for men. So I think somewhere that mindset shifting is also very important. And the way I see it now is that other than just being demand driven, the other effective strategy has been collectivization. Women supporting and uplifting each other has been a very important strategy in which, comes to the society and then it can start becoming gender responsive. because then when women come together in groups, they build confidence, they share knowledge, and create an environment when they feel empowered to adopt these new technologies. And then you can shift that kind of mindset that, okay, this isn't my cup of tea. So I think that is very important. But again, technology in itself is no magic bullet. You need technology out there such that it is something that is questioning the gender power dynamics. That is how I think can a technology be really gender responsive in that way.
The last point that you made around women's movement and women's solidarity, and how that is also very collectivization process, is one of the most important structures. I think I would like Pallavi to actually come in here, because Utthan's work around women's movement strengthening through collectivization is perhaps one of the best examples that we are seeing enormous change in agency, in leadership, women's leadership across rural Gujarat. So, if you could, Pallavi, share your experiences of how women's collectivization, how it can actually help in greater gender transformative adaptations of technology and digital tools and mediums.
So our conversation is around women in agriculture, and like Anvesha, like you said, collectivizing women, something which Uthan has been doing since the past many years. In general, is something which we've seen how whether we speak of the women's movement or whether we speak of Uthan or anybody of us working in several locations, like locally or globally, collectivization has definitely provided the strength for any kind of learning, any kind of action, any kind of change, any kind of resistance, any kind of new ideas. And I think that's what has also really been the strength of our work, really, with women farmers. I think at the first place, collectivization started off with trying to understand and build this collective identity of we as women farmers. So many people in our field team itself are also from the farming community. So this really helps bringing together some people with the same, in the same occupation. Also, especially women, where we're talking about, their identity as farmers, which, we know that although women do most of the work in agriculture, they neither have the identity, they neither have the, ownership to the land and to the various resources, and as a result of that, they're also neglected from the various schemes and subsidies which a land owning farmer would get. In that sense, collectivization has been really helpful. We have also seen that we keep speaking to so many other peers who work around sustainable agriculture, and I mean recently somebody was telling us that how is it that you're not providing any physical inputs really to the women farmers you all work with, whether it is a large amount of seeds or a large amount of physical bio inputs, for example. But how are the women so strong? How are they really into this entire thing as a collective? And here I think it's this women's leadership building, which is the base of any intervention or any change which we want to bring, whether it is agriculture or goatery or fisheries or anything in general, right? Even response to gender-based violence. So I think that's really critical. And even for digital interventions, like Prama said, that the underlying social barriers, how we are addressing that is key. First is really to get women farmers together, and then parallelly develop all these critical things which are critical, very critical, build them around this entire picture and see how we can really then enable agency for women farmers. Some other, digital interventions. When we speak of digital or to technological interventions, they need to be co-designed with women farmers. For example, if we're talking about, agriculture-based women farmers, we need to understand that what really, for example, is which gives them the highest drudgery. What could the options be? Even in the field where we work, simple small changes in the design of the weeder made the pushing the weeder easier for women, because it's sometimes such technologies don't look at the height of women or the posture which women generally use. But unless we continuously work and talk with women, you're not able to really think of what these potential solutions could be. And so many solutions, innovations we all know come from community and women themselves. but we need to have the time and space to really have these conversations, expose them to, of course, new things which they may not know about. In terms of technology as well, for example, in Bhavnagar, where we work, the Samarthan Mahila Sanghathan has recently, been a year now, they have initiated an agri-tech rental enterprise. This really then breaks the generally understood male dominance in agriculture technical leadership. And so women-led enterprise. Needs came from women farmers, whereas the small and mother women farmers do not house all the big equipment they need, like a thresher or a plower. But this then came as a business solution where women took leadership and are really now running this enterprise, and in the location where we have high caste and class dynamics, where women found it difficult to even drive a tractor. Even still, it is not changed really. But we have a woman farmer who has now learned how to drive a tractor. This exposure, starting to do many small things in the bigger picture of the socio-technical innovation bundle is really, really key.
Okay, fantastic. I would like to go a little micro now and focus more on the digital aspect of it. And Pallavi, I would like to ask you this question. You have been using digital means and tools for training purposes. So, if you could maybe briefly tell us about some of your dilemmas and some of your learnings. What exactly do you need when you're designing a training through a digital aid? So, if you could tell us your experience of, how did you develop simple training languages? Did you experiment it? What was the feedback loop like? So, if you could just give us a brief example of that as well.
I mean, in our tools which we used, we were really using the tablets. And of
Hmm.
course, as we strengthened the digital literacy, a lot of women use the tablets also to use WhatsApp as a means of communication. In a sense, the sheer exposure to be able to use a digital communication means was quite empowering for women. They started using a lot of it in their own personal life as well. Women who are maybe could not type, but they started using voice notes. Some months back, the Krishi Sakhis, have actually formed a small group where they are performing these awareness kits at the community level to promote sustainable agriculture using, folk methods. The skit group was invited to the convention which was held by the Ministry of Agriculture and Family Welfare in Pune. Airfare was covered by the organizers. First time these Krishi Sakhis were taking the Indigo flight to any other town ever in their lives. We were traveling with them, and one of the Krishi Sakhis really showed how in the village WhatsApp group, the Sarpanch had put up that she was the first person who had taken this flight.
Fantastic. Prama, anything that you have been using, any examples from your learning labs of how you can use digital, be it WhatsApp or some means of training through tablets, etc., if you would like to share here?
So we have two learning labs. And in one learning lab, it's very interesting, both in West Bengal, not too far away, but we wanted to include the digital component. In one, we could, because that place is where women do have ownership of a smartphone, etc. So there we could start, training women, like the basic digital literacy training started happening in that learning lab. While in the other learning lab, women did not have ownership of smartphones or even the basic phones. So, of course, that we could not. So, that is about the inclusion bit. Now, in the learning lab where we could start, digital literacy training, etc., we formed like a WhatsApp group of the lead farmers. And initially it was very interesting. Women were discussing things about, when the next meeting is going to happen, what happened in a meeting. Women were actually also, as Pallavi mentioned, using voice notes to keep minutes of meetings, etc. But after a point of time, what we realized is that the WhatsApp groups became flooded with content like, you know, good morning, good afternoon, good night messages, and then huge amount of fake news being circulated. So that was a very big concern. I mean, while we were using these platforms, we also realized that, a major concern in this digital misuse. We
Hmm.
keep talking about digital tools, digital access, etc., but we also need to be very aware of digital misuse. So, from misinformation to, say, privacy concern, and women in particular, they are the ones who have to face it specifically. especially online harassments, etc. We are trying to navigate these challenges by being very careful and intentional. We are raising awareness among stakeholders about responsible digital usage, ensuring WhatsApp groups stay purposeful by kind of moderating content and guiding conversations, and moving forward quite cautiously to integrate digital tools. Yes, WhatsApp has huge potential, making it truly effective. It truly can be effective when it has, you know, why you are using it. There are clear objectives and safeguards in place. So that is something that we are kind of treading a little bit caution.
So I just wanted to add a little bit on, the feedback loop which we have been trying to use in, making the digital tool usage be a little more effective. We've been trying to do trainings on a regular basis. Rishi Sakis themselves said that we don't understand this one training, for example, or two trainings is not enough for us. We need people to sit with us to, practically sit and say, even download a video, upload it in a certain way. Like, it sounds simple, but these are small things which, they found difficult to really traverse. They gave very good suggestions on how language could be, needs to be more tuned to how they would understand it, because there's always some prompts which are maybe in English, but we really became much clearer to us in the earlier days that, you need to have it in the local vernacular language so that we can easily read it. Again, internet connectivity was something which they also mentioned was a challenge. Some of them using tablets even said that, we find it so heavy and difficult to carry around, and along with safety concerns, this was also a concern. So,
Hmm.
of course, in the beginning, we had seen that, we also have safe tablet covers, which helps them to at least reduce some tension of how they could potentially damage the equipment. But, ideas even
Hmm.
like that, how would they carry them to the village? Do they have a bag which is, safe enough for them to carry it? So that at least that tension is not there on their head. And privacy and security concerns, of course, is huge. We've had examples where we formed a WhatsApp group, but the digital device is in the hands of, say, others in the family. Some women's
Hmm.
numbers were misused. We had to totally disband the group, and it created a big challenge for us in one particular village. And so traversing digital spaces is not easy. But I mean, how we can make it empowering? I think it's important that if we start small, keep talking to the users, we relook at how we're rolling it out, and then see how you can move to more users.
So we have been talking about socio-technological innovation bundling, and I think that was one of the key projects is when all three of us sort of touched points. I'll ask Prama first to maybe talk about it. Why did they needed to do four case studies around STIBS, and what were some of the findings? And then if Pallavi, you can come in and in particularly speak about your learnings and insights when we collaborated on this case study for IRRI's STIBS program.
So we have been talking about that digital innovation in itself is no magic bullet. It has to come in within an ecosystem, which is fertile enough for these tools to reach its transformative impact. Now, socio-technical innovation bundling is just saying that. It is an approach that talks of systematically designing bundles of innovations to maximize the effectiveness. The term itself was introduced by Barrett and his colleagues in Cornell around 2022, though the concept itself has been in practice for much longer. The core idea behind STIBS is that multiple types of innovations exist: social, technical, technological, institutional, and they all need to come together to make meaningful impact. Now, just to give you an example of what we mean by this and where can we find any classic example of it, the Asian Green Revolution was a classic example of it. The success of the high yielding crops, the variety of crops, was not just due to the new dwarf variety, but also because of the supportive policies and institutional mechanisms that ensured their accessibility to millions of farmers. Of course, the revolution had its huge amount of shortcomings, leading to various unintended consequences. But that is what STIBS is about, to get those multiple into innovations come together and of course through multiple stakeholders. Now, because no one person or no one organization can be responsible for all those innovations, so multi-sectoral, multi-stakeholder approach to come together to give out that bundle of innovations. That is basically what STIBS is all about. Through the CGI Initiative on Gender Equality, which is now continuing in the name of Jesse Accelerator Sub-area of Work Empower, we have been adopting the STIBS approach to create context specific, systematically designed innovation bundles that ensure technologies work for the people they're truly intended to be working for. So, over the past 3 years, we have been applying this approach to make the agri food system more resilient and equitable in the face of increasing shocks and stresses. Of course, the case study project was one of our project within this bigger initiative where we were trying to glean out insights of how other organizations have used this approach, maybe not this particular name approach, how they have been doing that and what we can learn from them when we are working in our own learning labs. That is why we started this case study project. The reason why 4 case studies were taken together was nothing but to see the cases across 4 very distinct agroecological zones. So one was from the eastern part of Gangetic deltaic plains. One was from very dry lands of Maharashtra. The other one was from Utthan's case in Gujarat, salt marshes, and the other one was again the dry northern India kind of place in UP. So we wanted to have these 4 case studies come together and see how these organizations have been using the bundling approach without necessarily calling it socio-technical innovation bundle, and what can we learn from it, what can we learn from them, how have what have worked there, and what we can do better. So that was basically the idea of doing the case studies. One of the biggest takeaway while doing this project was of course that this framework or this approach might have been uh, coined by some people in Cornell, but it has been in use by most of the grounded NGOs working, because they know that it is important that to get something done you need multiple other things to be done. So we could see that all of these organizations are working uh, with that approach. Another key thing within this approach was mostly all organizations were working with women collectives. I think all grassroots organizations now acknowledge that the transformative impact that women collectives can have. So these are the few things that were common to all the case studies. The thing that we realized what we can do a little better perhaps is that moving towards bundling innovations a little systematically while also remaining flexible to incorporate learning and course corrections. These kind of bundling exercises, if you're doing on and off while you are going in an ad hoc manner, it can take a lot of time. Nowadays, the way the programs are designed, we do not get a lot of luxury of time or money. So we need to get successful cases faster. Then what can we do is to really make these bundles come together from the very beginning, where research is inbuilt from the very first step. You start talking with the farmers, you start understanding what the situation is, you start designing a theory of change with the farmers where you jointly discuss that okay, these are the 5 goals that we want to reach by 3 years. These 5 things will be done first and then maybe the next 3 to reach that common goal. So what we realized, I think that bit was something that was missing from these 4 case studies, where it was much more ad hoc bundling, while we in our learning lab have now tried to systematically get these bundles together, progressing towards a common goal with the farmers. But we also have tried to remain flexible to incorporate learning and course corrections so that, if we are going wrong, we also have that scope of changing certain things. So I think that was something that really came out from that case study project.
I think coming together how when Utthan, ISST, and ED really came together for this case study project. Our key learning was being able to put all this together in a very systematic way. So, like Rama said, we have been working in a very integrative way right from the very beginning. Collectivization of women, addressing challenges of women, being able to address land rights along with the entire technical package on practices and how the transfer would happen, the methodology of how transfer from lead farmers to women farmers would happen. All of this had been something which we had bundled together, and Utthan's experience has been in the past 4 decades that no change is really possible by just looking at one small aspect. There would be some change, but the deep change only happens when we look at all of it together. So it helped us really to structure and put together the learnings from the ground and show how it really has brought about change. We also, I think, learned a lot from the other case studies and the kind of digital tools people are using for, say, agricultural productivity or for agricultural advisory. But I think doing this entire project together really helped us to open up our eyes and see that which are the other bundle streams which we may not be looking at. We also really felt that understanding how women are really talking about climate change or how they are seeing climate change, how they have addressed it, what is the language they are using. I think one important discussion I remember from the session where we were all presenting, what came out was that there is no really word which is being used in the local language for resilience, for example. Doesn't have a great parallel in, say, Hindi or Gujarati. So it starts from there really. We're doing a small analysis from the two agroeconomic zones we work in about how women are looking at climate change, they see as resilience, what they see as challenges. So we're trying to bring out, the language of women farmers for climate action, adaptation, whatever we want to call it. One important insight was that how we could egg up our work with male family members, possibly reduce resistance to women's leadership in agriculture. We do that to some extent, but parallelly, if something like that is added to the bundle, it could be really strong. I still remember one line which was put together in our compilation that, to truly make women climate change resilient, the integration of empowering tools and systems is not just strategic, it's indispensable. And I think that is really core to what all of us are saying today.
I think as a researcher for this STIBS study, to also sort of add a gender transformative lens and feminist research methodology to it, I think it sort of helped us to create a very interesting point of view where you put the women farmer in the middle and then you have all of these technical, social, behavioral, and even as Prama said, policies. I think a very important lesson is how even fighting for land rights, for women is crucial to this idea of adaptation and innovation. If women don't have the right to land, at the end of the day, it's just not going to work. So it's absolutely important that policy and implementation of some interesting, very very gender forward legislations are implemented, and there's a community uptake of this legislations, and they just don't remain laws in paper and policies on paper. Just like you quoted something, Pallavi, I would also like to quote from the blog that we wrote out of this for IRRI. The STIBS aren't just about technical interventions, they're about creating a support system, a sisterhood of empowerment. So I think that truly beautifully sort of sums up what we were trying to do in our respective understanding of STIBS.
So, in one of our learning labs, women were being trained around financial literacy. This is the place where we have given the shaft cutter, and women need to have a business plan to kind of get it running. There was this person who was coming and training them, but he was a man, and they did not feel very comfortable. So they were like, "It's okay, we have understood. The lead farmers will now teach us. They have got it. We want our collective meeting places to be more a meeting for us where we can, expose our knees, push up our saris a little bit more, and sit freely and talk." We started with making them get accustomed to climate smart agricultural technologies, help them with CSATs. We ended up actually creating these places of sisterhood where women come, they because they just want to come. This is a place where they can talk, they can learn, they can share. So that is so important. I mean, STIBS did not have a gender transformative or responsive idea when the people from Cornell were kind of coining it out. The way we are using STIBS in our learning labs, learning from organizations from like Utthan, is that it actually becomes very empowering spaces for sisterhood. So thank you for reading out that bit from your blog.
I mean, my next question was also about one is what were some of the aha moments from digital interventions that you have done? And then I would also like you to focus on how do you scale up such a interesting and very important in today's digitalizing world where agri-tech is a very important focus of the government, of the market system, and then you have the women farmers who are still not identified as farmers. So how do you think something like this can be scaled up, but at the same time not losing the gender transformative uh, lens of focus, which I think is crucial to social justice and gender justice?
In terms of aha moment, I think women using the voice notes was something which was quite interesting for us and revealing how they were really using that as a quick tool to communicate with each other, to communicate with the Utthan team members, and how they've really started using this digital learning in their personal lives in the entire digital uptake work which we have taken. So, of course, using it for showing videos to women or to entering data, and another interesting thing was that how women gave good critical feedback on way the digital tools are being rolled out. Yeah, so I think even for scaling this feedback loop on doing whatever we want to do, how is something which is also very critical. But of course, before I begin, I think this whole word scale. What is scale? Kya hai ye after all? It could be deep, it could be big, it could be scale out, scale in. Whatever really helps where we are is something which is good scaling for me. Looking at the various challenges which women are currently facing. So even if we focus around women and agriculture, looking at the current pace where they are with digital interventions, I feel it is something that needs to be done slowly, very intentionally. Pilot it in a small way, do feedback loops, and then see how we can, further grow these. We already spoke a lot about how it could not be a one size fits everything model. How we need to work and co-create, any intervention which involves digital interventions as a part of the larger STIB strategy. So again, the larger ST-based strategy is something which is non-negotiable. It must be within that entire strategy so that it does not become the overall and end all. Because then we think that okay, with this digital intervention, some magic will happen, and agriculture will be transformed and women will be empowered. I think that's not the case. Some other points I feel which are crucial is contextualized training, safety and privacy related practices and trainings are as important. How we could leverage women's groups to disseminate practices, talk about safety is something which could be very useful if we want to scale. So I think for scale it's important to really address right in the beginning in the design stage of how the various challenges would be looked at. If we address these various pieces, I think that's what could be then transformational. Along with all of this, placing it in a long-term engagement, local leadership building with community is so very important, so that we really see that the digital intervention is empowering women and not really taking them few steps back.
The aha moments, I think there were many, starting from the case studies, as Pallavi was mentioning. When we saw women using the tractor, I think that was a very important aha moment for me. Honestly, you were talking about the study that we did in non-traditional livelihood when I was a part of ISST. So women using something like a tractor is non-traditional, right? And the imagination itself that, okay, women will always be using smaller tools, something that they can carry or something like that. But something as big as a tractor, and that it can happen. When I read that, that was a smallish aha moment. But then it was backed by our own work in our learning labs when we gave women feed processing unit and the shaft cutter, which is also a big kind of a unit. So the idea is that, women cannot do this. Women, it will be too difficult for women to do certain things of certain sizes. Oh, this technology is not right for women. Have we really tried to interact with the women for whom we are giving these technologies? Do we know how much these women can do and cannot do? This entire thing of, big tools and women, When that came into place, it was a big aha moment for me. The other thing is, when you come to the digital tools, this one woman, we were giving digital training. It was not a overt expectation. It was more like a covert expectation that, digital tools will be adopted in their own personal lives. More overt expectation was that it will be used in their entrepreneurial out of the poultry that they're setting up. We thought that, okay, that tool will be used there. But as soon as they got a hang of the digital tool, one of these women said that, I now feel much more safer when I'm going out, because now I use the Google Map. So the way Google Map has kind of helped these women become more mobile is such a fantastic moment for me. One of the part of this bundle was to allow women to talk and reflect on the project, just like Pallavi was telling, the feedback loop. And women were for the first time vocalizing the impacts of the project that they themselves are going through, and they were kind of trying to write down reflection reports. And that itself was such an empowering feeling, that okay, women are being able to write what they are feeling, and being able to articulate what they're feeling is such a huge aha moment for me. So I think I have had multiple aha moments out of this project. And I think the reason why is because it's a bundled approach. I mean, if the bits of the puzzles come together and you see the bigger picture, of course, it will give to a very nice, interesting, exciting aha moment. So I think that is the beauty of the approach. But of course, I think the next question just kind of brings you to the fact that, okay, great, very good, a lot of aha moments, but how do you scale it? You are having these aha moments in what is called pilots. And we all know that pilots never fail and pilots never scale. So, how do you then scale it up? I think personally, the key is to scale deep, not just scale up. Too often, success is measured by, how many people are being reached, rather than how meaningful and lasting the impact is. Definitely, broad reach is valuable. Real transformation happen when interventions are deeply rooted within communities, allowing individuals to adapt, sustain, and replicate these models in their own context. For example, an early assessment of our learning labs shows promising result, which in turn encourage our partners to adopt and integrate this approach into their own project locations. So this kind of organic buy-in create a bandwagon effect, where scaling out happens naturally as more stakeholders see value and impact firsthand. So by focusing on what we call scaling deep, I think scaling up and scaling out will follow as natural outcome.
It gives me a lot of hope, all these aha moments, that it's going to be a very exciting time in the coming years to see how gender designing becomes the focal point of agri technologies, how women are provided digital literacy to adapt to this, while at the same time, the age old problems that continue to persist, be it land rights, be it gender based violence, etc. While you advance two steps, it sort of pulls you back one step back. And we hope to see some positive impacts coming out of all of these, which sort of is true to every woman's story, and it's absolutely important to talk about. Before we end, I would like each of you to think of one digital dilemma that you have vis-a-vis your project, and what you think could be the solution, and who are the stakeholders you think who can bring in a solution to this digital dilemma.
Now, the digital dilemma is the misuse of digital space. It is not just in agriculture, it is everywhere. I mean, we know that digital has a very transformative potential, but how do we really make it transformative yet reduce its misuse? And especially when it comes to women and marginalized people is in the rural belts, which lack exposure to a lot of the exposure that we really get in urban places, is my biggest dilemma around ethics, around privacy. I mean, we are constantly giving out our private information to the digital domain. Do we know what is happening with that? The digital tools that are being scaled out and up in massive scale in the landscape, agricultural landscape, I think this is something that we need to be very, very mindful of. The stakeholders definitely are in this case, the policymakers. I think we need a very, very important and robust digital usage policy out there, which right now is lacking. Which definitely does not mean that you want a extreme amount of moderation, but you also want a safe space where you have certain rules and laws where you can go to when something happens.
Okay, so from a from an Utthan point of view, I think, I mean, our digital dilemmas, I think, is being able to respond, to the speed. How we need to really equip ourselves to be able to respond to it, because we have today, for example, we were just discussing a few days back, a group of us in Utthan, that we've looking at the digital and the technology side, the kind of work we've rolled out. Women farmers who are adopting it, they expect the support, or they definitely need the support to be able to quickly then help them take that further, because we ourselves are learning, and to be able to integrate that into the design effectively of whatever we're doing. Not a dilemma, really a challenge that we really need to overcome, because we see that, for example, we have set up bio input production unit, many of them. So one of them is a jivamrut production automatic plant, and Shilpa Ben, who's the women farmer, participated recently in the Krushi Melas at Bhavnagar. So she has had some recent coverage in the newspaper, and she's someone who's saying that education is important, but if you don't have skills and knowledge, what use is education? And she is somebody who did not wait for Than to really support her. She's printed her own visiting cards, and she started her work. So I think being able to really deliver and to be able to continually support women in their journeys is something which is a challenge which we are trying to work on and address now. So setting up a for example, a automatic Jivamut plant is something which requires a constant support. May not always be about money once the plant is set up, but strategy, helping the woman to farmer to really scale it up, to market her products, to build a strategy. So these are some things for example, we initiate digital interventions, but it requires so much more. We're trying to see how we would address that. And in terms of what the solutions could be, who the stakeholders would be, one is, of course, Utthan, our team ourselves. And the other is, of course, the people whom we work with, whom we collaborate with, via funders, via the networks we work with, that how we could really collectively learn from each other, how we could invest better and more flexibly in rolling out digital interventions, not look just at numbers of, if you have done
Hmm.
5,000, so how will it move to 20,000? But how will that 5,000 also go to the next level?
Great, thank you both. I think it has been an absolutely wonderful time. I have had a wonderful time interacting with both of you as always, and it's been quite a learning moment for me, and sort of looking back to what we did and what new must now be done. Both of you have given us interesting examples of dilemmas, digital dilemmas. One, safety, a very, very important aspect vis a women's point of view, and then we have speed of adaptability, and what is it that you need, what are the resources, what is the time, what is the impact, how do you understand depth of impact. We have touched upon barriers, we have touched upon strategies, interestingly the role of women's collectives in greater adaptability of technological and digital innovations in agri-food systems. I think the next few years are going to be very critical as we head towards the end era of SDGs, and it'll be very interesting to see some of these conversations flowing, especially from a gender transformative point of view of how do you change the power relation even within this digital and technological innovations. I continue to look forward to both your work in this field, and I hope we get to work again together very soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Anvesha. That was wonderful talking to you.
Thank you, Anvesha. It was a good conversation. And I think even the conversation has triggered so many interesting ideas. So thanks a lot.
Absolutely. Great. Thank you, listeners, for tuning in, and stay tuned for another exciting episode very soon. Till then, please subscribe and share with your friends and families. Thank you.